Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, the squirrels have gotten in the mailbox as we discuss an unfortunate new vulnerability in Squirrelmail. Then we talk about a surprising new entrant to the space of anonymous domain name purchasing? Yeah, that's right. And Dan and I get just a little bit jealous of Canada and their very sensible policies towards net neutrality. Plus, it's your feedback, a rambunctious roundup, and so much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Welcome to this week's episode of TechSNAP, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly systems, network, and administration podcast. This episode was streamed live on April 25th, 2017, and is brought to you by our three excellent sponsors, DigitalOcean, Ting, and iXsystems. Joining me this week is our favorite host, the admin, the organizer, the explainer. Oh yes, it's Dan. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Hello, Wes. Hello, audience. How's everyone?
When I say it like that, it almost sounds like Shodan, the search engine, which comes up on this show from time to time.
Apparently, that's a very popular site.
How are you doing this week?
I'm doing better today now that my network is sort of running again.
Oh, so did you do some maintenance this weekend then?
I did. You may remember that I got a 48-port Unify switch.
Yes.
Well, on Saturday, I figured, what the hell? Just throw it in. What could go wrong?
Yeah. What did go wrong?
Well, this wound up running most of my network for Sunday and Monday.
What is that?
This is a little Hutu.
Okay. I don't know if I've ever heard of that before.
It can act as a wireless access point. You can plug it into a wired network.
That's cute. Yeah.
It can charge USB devices for you. That's
nice.
That's what the USB port is for. But then this one is for charging this thing. So this is like a 2200 amp hour battery. No, sorry, 10,400 amp hour milliamp hour battery.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
So this ran my entire Wi-Fi network for over 24 hours, and it's only half full.
That's awesome.
Sorry about on the mic. It's only half full. Does the light? Yeah, the lights show up there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, handy.
So
that's a nice little device, sir.
It is nice. The real use case for it, though, is sharing go-go connections on a plane.
Oh, really? So you've used that before then?
I have. I used this on on a Denver flight return. It barely touched the battery life.
I mean, that's especially important when you're on a plane or other confined environment.
Yeah, because what this does is I was flying with someone else.
Yeah.
So you authenticate to this thing. It's just a login. You authenticate to it just like a WAP. And then from there, you connect through to GoGo's Wi-Fi, authenticate there, and then everyone that's authenticated to this can use your GoGo connection.
That sounds great. That sounds awesome, actually. I need more friends like you.
Or you're somewhere with crappy Wi-Fi, but a decent wired connection. You just plug that in.
And away you go. So how is it configured? Is it easy, web interface, or something else?
Yes, there's a web interface on here. So, it comes up with a default IP address. You log in, you adjust it, you configure it. But there are a lot of configuration options. I really like it. It's very simple. I believe there's a way to upgrade the firmware inside, but
you'll have to investigate.
Not looked at that. I'll have to investigate that one day. But I love the dual nature of it. You can use it for recharging your phone while you're using it to surf the internet.
That's awesome. So it ran your whole house there.
It ran my laptops, so that I ran a cable from here to the switch up there and got that working because the Wi-Fi wasn't working yet because all the Wi-Fi is on separate VLANs.
Yeah. Okay. So as you were fixing stuff up, adjusting settings.
While I was fixing stuff, I locked myself out more than once. Perhaps half a dozen times I locked myself out. This is where serial cables, and
Yeah, sometimes, right? Like that's
data
what it comes
cables.
down to.
Yep, become useful.
And you're super thankful that you had them.
Yes, and everyone should have one of these, which is a USB to serial cable.
Yeah, those are, I mean, like, it's one of those tools where you're like, I hope I don't need this, but if you do, it's awesome.
Because laptops generally do not have serial ports.
I'm not even sure where I would try to buy a laptop with a serial port. 1985, maybe?
You can buy them, but they're pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Because you have to be at least,
Right, yeah, exactly. So maybe if you can take like a nice modern laptop, add the serial port, and then just fill the rest of the chassis with battery, hey, maybe that's a product.
Yep. What I would like to do is have several more of these cables.
Yeah.
And have a couple more of those because these are just so useful. This is something like a 12-foot serial cable.
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
It's plugged into, can you see it's plugged into it's plugged into my PFSense box right there.
Yes.
PFSense box. So, and then that orange cable is plugged into the modem. And it's more or less running right now, but I don't have all my VLANs properly configured. In fact, I'm ashamed to say everything is running on all VLANs.
Yes.
So
no
it's
segmentation
not very nice.
yet.
I don't like it.
Yeah. But you've got your own, your regular, you use like a Unify access point or Ubiquity Unify or something in the Ubiquity line?
Yeah. I have 2 wireless access points, a Unify 10 gig 16 port switch, and then a 1 gig. Well, here we got pictures.
There we go.
Do you have that first Twitter link?
Let's see.
I bought the 10 gig switch because I wanted the big servers in there to talk quickly because I pass a lot of data around. They're mostly backup servers. Like there's 27 gig in one, 27. Yeah. Now, the picture on the left is the old switch. That's the network, extreme network switch.
Cables look nice.
Thank you. It worked well. It wasn't too bad to configure, but it was loud and it was hot. Whereas the one on the right, which was just in there for configuration, was much quieter, much quieter. Now, is there anything down below that? Were there any? Oh,
there we go. Cables undone. Yeah. Nice.
So, yeah, remove the cables. That didn't take too long, but it is kind of persnickety. Get rid of the. I only removed the bottom ones because the top ones would be in the way. And while I was thinking about this earlier today, I realized what I really should have done is set up a little lab.
Right.
With all kinds of. I have enough other like little spare switches. This is another recommended buy. It's a little Netgear switch.
Oh, it's just like a little 5-port or something. 4-port.
It is a 5-port. It's a ProSafe GS10 5E. It was some ridiculous price on Newegg one day, and I bought 2 of them. And they're fully managed.
Oh, really?
Fully managed switch.
That sounds actually very convenient.
In that, yes.
There's a lot of times where I don't need a form factor very much bigger than that. I only have a couple devices, but I do want a little bit of the managed functionality.
Yeah. And I'm not using any of the managed bits, but it shows up in the Unify. Like Unify is very nice GUI, and it lists all the devices, and it shows up in there. So that was impressive.
Awesome.
What else went wrong? This is a very interesting toy.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if I'm familiar with it.
It comes apart. You feed all your cables through like this.
Oh.
Like that.
Yeah.
And then you put this thing back on. Like that. And then you pull.
Oh, okay. That seems actually very handy. Where did you get that?
Amazon.
Nice.
It is called a cable comb.
Cable comb.
And so it keeps all your cables in a nice little bundle, and you put Velcro, you pull a bit further, you put Velcro, keeps them all very nice and straight. It's a lot easier than doing it by hand.
Right, and then at the end, you can kind of disconnect it and plug everything in, and then you have a nice
go like that, take them all out, put this in a safe place for the next time you need it.
Okay, I'm going to have to add that to my wish list.
So that, and the other thing that you should have is something like this. It's a cable tester.
Oh.
So 2 little ports on the side, plug the cable in between, push the button, the lights come on, tell you whether or not the cable's good.
So it just sends like various signals across, measures the other side, and neat.
It saved trouble when I said, I wonder if this cable is bad. And it was. Especially
when you're like down in the middle, you're trying to get stuff back up in operation, or you're like in the middle of your rack, things are all over the place. You don't want to have, just like, does this work or not? Can I just throw it in the trash bin?
And I think I bought these at Home Depot maybe 10 or 12 years ago.
Wow.
And they still go. What are they? They're Ideal Link Master. I'm sure they may not have this particular one. 62200 is the model number, but anyway.
Linkmaster. Awesome. Well, there's
when you really need it.
Some pretty good tips, hot buys. Get them this week. They're on sale.
Get them this week. Yes. Send all your dollars too. Thank you.
Anything else that's new in your life this week?
No. What about you?
I think it's actually been pretty simple. My phone did die a couple weeks ago. I've got the replacement here in studio. Came yesterday. I didn't have enough time to set it up. But after the show tonight, I will be back in the civilized age of a modern smartphone.
What did you get?
Just a replacement for the same one. So I had the Google Pixel. It died, turned into a brick. Used a backup phone for a while, and they sent me a replacement. So that's good.
The most annoying thing about not having that working was my phone would not work.
Yeah, totally.
And then this afternoon, I was on a long extended phone call with someone, and we were both sitting here working. And all of a sudden, he moved across like this in the screen. And I thought it was a reflection in my monitor of someone behind me.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Just this chill went straight down my spine.
Who's in this room?
It was scarier than any movie I've seen recently.
All right, well, we'll try to make sure that the show today is a little less scary than that. We'll keep it tame but interesting.
That's very kind.
So I guess that brings us to our first story this week.
It does.
It's a little bit. It's unfortunate. I've used this product in the past.
So have I.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have. So all right, why don't you lay the bad news on the people?
Well, when I first read about this, I wasn't really sure that it was a serious issue. And then I realized I was taking issue with the way it was being described, and I'll explain as we go along. So, Squirrelmail was once the web interface to go for. It's PHP based. It does a very good job of talking to your mail server, your maildir. I forget it. Is it an IMAP server or just strict? No, it doesn't use IMAP. It's just strictly maildir.
So. That was my understanding.
I can't remember.
But it's been a while since I've used it. Let's check.
Yeah. So while you look that up, I'll go a little bit through this. So it's PHP based, but basically, do not blame PHP here. It's not PHP that is fault. Too often people harp on about PHP and say, oh my God, it's just full of bugs and all these things. That's not the problem. The problem is the people doing the coding. And with everything, if you do it poorly without knowing all the security implications, mistakes can happen. So don't blame the language, silly people. So, how it comes about is Squirrelmail actually invokes a binary. It actually invokes user sbin sendmail, which you can set in the configuration, but it invokes a binary. and it invokes it with escape shell command. And anytime you're invoking a shell command from a program that accepts user input, you're gonna have trouble.
Yep. Right. It's the same like if you're using eval with user input, all of these things. It's just arbitrary computation can happen. Watch out.
Don't trust your frickin' users ever. So this was found sometime in January, or it was reported to the maintainers in January. And it's only being released now because it's reached the time period where the guy said, okay, well, they haven't done anything about it, so it's time to release it. Now, one of the things that the original post says is SendMail, perhaps the most popular mail transfer agent, often comes configured as default on email environments. Well, SendMail used to be the MTA. It used to be everywhere.
Yeah.
And it was written in a time when everything was trusted. Nobody did anything evil on the internet at that time. And if you ever get a chance, listen to Eric Allman. Does that sound right? Yeah. Listen to Eric Allman's talks on the internet. You can find them on YouTube, possibly on the BSD Can channel, about the early days of SendMail and all the things that they had to do and how the goal lines were constantly being moved as people wanted new features and connecting new machines and stuff like that. And this is not long after the time when you can measure the number of computers on the internet on a piece of A4. There was not a lot of them. So anyway, back from SendMail. I'm going to jump over to the next page, the one about the actual exploit.
Yeah, sure.
The one on legal hackers. If you scroll down to where you see the first code base, the first little code bit where they do an str replace, that's it. So this line, this envelope from equals str replace. This is how they're trying to sanitize the code. And one of the things that they've done is try and get rid of /0s and /n's. Well, what the guy did in this exploit is use a /t, which is a tab character.
Oh.
So it's just another white space character, and they're not getting rid of all the white space. So all they do is they pass in parameters. And because you're invoking a binary on the command line, these are just optional parameters. And what he does is he says, you use a small file on disk, put it there. And then basically, if you can do that, if you can put a small file on disk, and the next command you send to SendMail, say, use that small file as your configuration.
Ooh.
And yeah, it's not an easy way in, but I can see where this is going to cause all kinds of trouble.
I mean, it makes it kind of like, we talk a lot about like, don't roll your own crypto. In the same way, like, don't roll your own sanitation or whatever. Because it's hard. Like, there's a lot of obscure ways, especially if you're sending something to the shell or other things that you're going to forget about. So, if you have to do anything like this in the first place, which ideally you shouldn't, you should probably try to use something that's, battle tested, open source, has been audited, or at least, looked at by a lot of people.
Do you know anything like that? Like something better than this? Like there are only certain characters that are valid in an envelope from, I would think.
Yeah.
But it's still difficult.
It's absolutely difficult.
One thing I would have done would be not URL encode, but there's a PHP function escape. Escape.
Something like that.
Yeah. But basically, it would have converted the /t to a %4d or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that would have helped, but it's not the point right now.
That is not the point.
So the next thing, and this is where I get annoyed with the article, is to say the most recent version 1422 and prior versions of the package are believed to be vulnerable. As it's an open source project and version 1422 was released nearly 6 years ago in July 2011, it's not entirely clear if a patch is coming. But the most recent commit to the FreeBSD port was in October 2016. And what they are doing on FreeBSD is they're picking up the development releases from Squirrelmail, and they seem to be running fine. And those releases, if you go to the download page, you can see that there are the stable versions and there are the development versions. And there's one there dated today. I wonder if they fixed it.
Nice. Oh, I hope so.
So perhaps this whole story is out of date. But yeah, it's right there. There's a development version that's been released. Basically, it's 1.52 SVN is what they're calling it, but they date it. And yeah, they've just changed the release mechanism. They're doing development versions all the time instead of stable versions.
Yeah, I know. I've seen that before a few times. In open source projects like Grub comes to mind. There's a long period of time between Grub releases. So like a lot of major Linux distributions was just shipping, various semi-stable development snapshots and other things. But it's nice to see that development continues. The fixes do exist, even if it's not released in an official release.
Well, it is fair enough because people get tired of working on stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and maintaining stuff, right? Like years after you're like, this was exciting to write, and now I'm stuck here decades later, perhaps, still maintaining it, even if you're not excited about it anymore.
That's why I like writing blog posts, because you don't have to go back and correct something.
Right.
Like you may correct something that's factually incorrect, but I'm not going back and rewriting it.
They're expected to age, right? You have to view them in that context. And it's not like a tool, right? There's no functionality. While that may no longer be useful to read, at least you didn't break anyone's workflow. And
some blog posts, like, believe it or not, one of my most popular blog posts on the FreeBSD diary is how to untar.
Wow. That's pretty funny. Although I'm consistently surprised how bad people are with the tar flags or tar commands in general.
I'm pretty sure that I called it untar.php. I did.
Nice.
Untar.php. That was written in 1999. So that's 18 years old. And I had no idea how to untar.
Here we are.
So I started writing it and documenting it. And time after time after time, this was the biggest hit in my stats. Other things would peak in as they were newer, but this one was always ranked up there highly because people Google for untar.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure a lot of new users to the Unix environment are like, what is this command? How do I work? Where's my zip file? Mm-hmm. And so, probably even years later, that's still a helpful reference.
There's other ones like setting my bash prompt. That's not changed much.
Right, yeah.
But some things like how to configure stunnel.
Ooh, yeah.
People still use stunnel?
I think so. I use I end up preferring, what's the one Colin Percival makes as part of TarSnap?
Oh yeah.
I forget what it's called. I love it. It's really useful. Yeah, spipe-d. That's what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you use it for?
One main use case was I don't use it for that currently, but for a while I was running Synergy, the mouse sharing software, on multiple things. But I'd paid for it in the past, but I didn't know where my license was or whatever. And it is open source still. They just require you to pay if you want binaries built, which was not a problem for me. But you don't get SSL support unless you get the premium version. So spipe-d there, and it worked beautifully. So I've used it for many things like that, where just bootstrap a more secure, especially if it's just two socket connections. You're like, beautiful, done.
I used to use it for something, I can't remember what. It was a link between ports, between two things, or something which did not speak SSL. I've always wanted to have Synergy set up here, but between my home laptop and my work laptop, they can't talk at all anyway because the work laptop is on a VPN.
Right. So
it has no contact with home whatsoever.
You have to do some funky routing or something.
Yeah. So no, no. So yeah, I've used Synergy. I liked it. It was very nice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a good project. I'm glad it exists. And if you can support it, please do.
Yep. Back to Squirrelmail.
Yes, back to Squirrelmail.
So this was written on April 24th, only yesterday. So the second last paragraph says, while there isn't a fix available, Golunsky is encouraging users of the package to switch to a non-SendMail transport like SMTP. Why anyone wouldn't be using SMTP? I guess if they didn't want to set one up locally and they just wanted to use user local SBIN. Sorry, just the SendMail binary. That's
weird, though. Yeah.
And apparently there is a unofficial patch in the exploit article in the vulnerability disclosure post. So if you want a patch beforehand, or if someone wants to compare his patch to the release that came out today, please have a look. And that's about it. I actually stopped using Squirrelmail a few years ago and went to Roundcube.
Okay, how do you like it? I've considered using it, but have only played with like a demo box.
I hardly ever use it. Hardly ever. Not because I don't like it, but because I don't need to use it, because I'm either on my phone or on my laptop. It's only when I'm somewhere where I don't have any of that I use it.
Like if you're trying to check your email in an unusual situation where you don't have one of your native devices.
Maybe it's upgrading, but yeah, I almost always use one of my other devices. I have Roundcube running in OneGel with its own postfix implementation, so it can send out.
Right.
But then it only sends to another local smart host, and it talks to the IMAP server that's on the same host but in a different gel.
Oh, nice.
So even if you did get in there, you'd get the password for that, but you wouldn't be able anyway.
Anything else?
It's isolated as much. Sorry, it's isolated as much as I can. No, nothing more on this.
Nothing more. Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Something else.
There's one little note here.
Yeah.
So basically, the moral here, I think, is people sometimes tire of a project and lose interest. So be aware of that and monitor. One good thing you can do is set up a Google alert. In this case, Squirrelmail exploit. And that might alert you to anything that's coming down the pipeline that you might want to fix real quick.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Probably wise for anything that you set up those kinds of things for any software that's crucial to your day-to-day workflow or security or privacy would be. That's not something I actually thought about a lot, but that's good advice.
You're welcome.
I will say also you're making me a little bit jealous of your email setup. Right now I'm like paying a third party to host my MX records and do IMAP and that kind of thing.
I do too.
Oh, okay.
I have a third party do all my mail ingress. They do all my spam filtering.
Yes.
And
okay.
Because I get sick of maintaining that.
Yeah.
But I host my own IMAP server.
Okay.
And then do backups by ZFS snapshot and stuff like that.
Well, that leads perfectly into our first sponsor this evening, because if you're like me and you're jealous of Dan's setup, you probably need some new hardware to set up that new mail server at your house. Or other, maybe it's just going to be a great FreeBSD box, run a bunch of jails, fill a whole ton of roles. Look no further than iXsystems. Head on over to iXsystems.com/TechSNAP. That'll get you started. They have a great guide for buying hardware for open source. So, I mean, that's a great way to start. If that's not for you, or, you're a little more curious, you're like, what else does iXsystems have to offer? Go to the About Us page. They have a great graphic here. It highlights a lot of the things that they support, that they use, and they talk right there at the start about how they're champions of open source. And that's what makes them so different, in my eyes, from a lot of the other big hardware vendors. They're in it for the hardware game, and iXsystems is too. They make amazing hardware powered by awesome Intel processors. But iX understands what you want to use on that hardware, right? And they're experts in that too. So they don't just say the RAM works. That's all we can help you with. No, they want to understand your load. They want to understand what your workflows are. How much do you expect the system to grow? They want to work with you end to end to make sure that not only does your hardware work, but the product, the service, the solution that you're trying to sell or create, that works. Really, they hinge their success. It hinges on your success. So whether you need a whole new giant rack for your enterprise, or you just need a new server for, for mom and pop, or for the small office, it doesn't matter. iXsystems has got it covered. iXsystems.com/TechSNAP. Scroll down just a little bit. You'll see a ton of the awesome people they work with, right? Like University of Berkeley, Evernote, Sega, Noah, VMware, Adobe. These are big names. And it shows you that iXsystems, they're taken seriously, they are serious, and they're really the best in the biz. If you want to get started, I recommend the FreeNAS Mini right there down on the left. You'll love it. You just click that Learn Now button. If you're anything like me, you will be transfixed. Look at that. That is a sexy machine, and it's super performant. It comes with FreeNAS, which is an awesome open source storage, hardware, software appliance that iXsystems runs, right? So that's the thing, is they're invested in the community. They love OpenZFS. They work upstream with those things to make sure that the projects they support, the projects they deploy, the projects they sell, that they're first class. They know what they're doing. They have the experience. So if you're thinking about buying some new hardware, make sure you choose a vendor who understands that, your server needs to be custom, because, you're custom, you're special, your projects are special. You deserve the best that you can get. You deserve the best support, white glove service from talented sales engineers. Look no further than iXsystems.com/TechSNAP. All right, with that out of the way, what do you have next for us?
We have something that you brought my attention to, which is a anonymous domain name purchase service.
Right.
And I was quite intrigued to find out how they did this. And I started reading along on their website, and my notes are not coming up.
Huh.
My laptop is slow as crap right now, and I don't know why. Come on. Switch over to that page.
It's
there
a
we
TechSNAP
go.
mystery, everyone.
There we go. So I started reading about these guys. Did just a little bit of poking around to find out.
Did you figure out how to pronounce their name? That's step one.
No. Nala? It's almost like the name of a dog down the street. So what they're doing is they're giving a new service for people that take their privacy serious. One of the hardest things to do is retain anonymity when you buy a domain.
I mean, the first thing out the gate, they're like, hey, give us your contact information.
Credit card, please.
Yeah, exactly.
So what these folks are promising to do is to buy the domain on your behalf. Give us the money. We'll buy the domain for you. And you can do this with, you don't need an email address. You can do it with an anonymous XMPP account you can set up anywhere. So how are you going to pay? They take Bitcoin. So they are not a domain name reseller. They don't sell you the domain names. They buy it and hold it.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. So
the price includes your right to use it. So obviously they're charging a premium for their service. They have anycasted DNS. But when I went over to the About page, they said, if you ever want to move the domain from our system, we'll, of course, give you the domain without any additional costs. And then down there, it says it's run by 1333 LC based in Nevis. My first guess at Nevis was St. Bart's. No, hold on. I learned more. I looked at the IP address of the web server. It's registered to a group in Nicosia, Cyprus. So I sort of think that it's hosted in Cyprus, but I'm not sure.
Interesting.
And the person in charge of that block, the only name associated with that web block, is an address in Sweden. And the MX is also hosted in Cyprus. And I had a look, and they use postfix, maybe. It answers as postfix. But some of their FAQs were interesting. When you purchase a domain name through Nala, we own it for you. However, the agreement between us grants you full usage rights to the domain. Whenever you want to, you can transfer the partnership to yourself or some other party. But what legal recourse would you have if they said, nah,
right.
this is our domain?
That's a lot of trust to place. And I mean, I assume that there's like some sort of contractual thing, but that then, you know, under which country's laws would those be enforced by?
The domain name is Laos.
Okay.
.la is Laos.
Okay, interesting.
So far we have Laos, Sweden, Cyprus. I thought there was another country I mentioned. But yeah.
Yeah, I think you did. Nevis, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Nevis is, I forget where it was. I've got it here somewhere. St. Kitts.
That's what it is.
St. Kitts.
Yeah. Interesting. Trans-global operation, apparently.
If there's ever a legal dispute, what happens? I don't think you have a hope in hell.
No, I don't think so either.
If there's a legal dispute, you really have to trust them. And I can't imagine they'll get any very expensive domains that have a lot of value. But still, losing a domain is a big pain in the ass.
It is. I mean, a lot of times that's, intimately connected with your branding, with your marketing, all of that.
With your email address?
Yeah, exactly. I had a domain almost expire the other day, and it was a scary thing. Somehow it had been put into the junk mail, right? And I thought most of them were like auto-renew, but I was like, I don't want to lose that domain. So I can, especially if you build your business on something or your whole image.
Go and pay for 5 or 10 years in advance.
Yeah, totally.
And it's okay, because even if that domain, even if your current registrar goes under, that data is stored elsewhere at the main, so long as you're not with the top level.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. If the whole internet goes down, well then, the point is moot anyway. So did you try to sign up for this service?
No. I had no interest. Did you? Did you try?
No, I haven't. But I mean, it might be interesting.
I looked at the prices. They start from €15.
Okay.
All the way up to €60.
And that includes, like commons.com, .eu, .org, things that you might actually want.
.org is 15.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Hey, I mean, it's not unreasonable. A lot of places, you're already 10 plus for a domain, and then if you weren't using the service, you might get the WhoisGuard service from whatever registrar you're using anyway. That's another couple dollars. So,
.com, .net, .org, €15. So, fitting in with anonymity has always been a big thing about activism. Even hundreds of years ago, people used to publish under pseudonyms. So this is nothing new. It's just harder now to publish under a pseudonym because you could always print something up in your backyard if you had a printer in a backyard, and then just distribute it. And no one would know who it came from. They would just know the people distributing it. But it's much, although having a website makes it easier to get out to everyone, getting that website and having it anonymous is much more difficult. This sounds like a valid way to do it, just so long as you don't wind up losing a lot of money should something go wrong here. Right. Because even if this company were to go under or just disappear, what can you do? You can't transfer the domain.
Yeah, you don't own the domain.
You don't own it.
Yeah. Yeah, or they get bought by some, hostile company that you don't like or doesn't like you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you were to use it, I guess I would say, like hedge your bets, make sure that you have multiple domains for the same thing, things that you can transfer, things that aren't connected to it.
If your goal is to remain anonymous, you don't care about this side of it.
Right, yeah.
Because what you could do is you could publish something, if you're worried about being able to identify yourself, saying, hey, listen, I'm the new person. I'm the person that was behind this. The way you do that is you write a document and you put an MD5 on the website or SHA-256, and you say, okay, should this website ever go down, I will produce the document that matches this SHA-256. And then
that's a good idea.
If the website disappears, they take it over. You then start up a new website and say, hey, it's me again. How do you prove it's you? Because you previously published this SHA-256. And although it's pretty hard to get a collision,
I mean, it's at least a step, right? Like that's a reasonable way to approach it. Some ways to verify that, like, yes, the person who started this is the same person who's speaking now.
Who's starting this new one.
Yeah, exactly.
And here's my new, what would you call that? What would you call that thing you're dropping so that later on you can prove it's you?
Like identity token or something? Or like...
I don't know.
It's not really identity, but it is just showing that you have this. It's the same person in the same control of the same secrets in theory.
Proof of identity, something. I don't know. I'm sure there's a proper word for it.
Audience, write back to us and let us know what you come up with.
Yes, please. Yes, please. So while I wouldn't use them, I can definitely see the need. And yeah, the people that would want to remain anonymous aren't really worried about the domain going, because it's not the domain. It's the content, and it's the branding that they put on it, and that brand can go on any domain.
As long as you make sure that you have, like email lists or Twitter things or other channels that you can reach the people that are interested, so that you can tell them, hey, go to this new domain.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay. Anything else you'd like to add? Anything interesting in your DNS landscape?
If anyone comes in and starts using this, let us know.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Because it'll be interesting to see how this goes.
I completely agree with that.
I didn't sign up.
Yeah. So yeah, let us know if you do. We'll be curious to see. They've just started. It seems like so. It'll take a while to determine how well it works, if they get actual adoption, if they're successful.
Look at the bottom of the page. Njala DNS spaghetti.onion.
Oh yeah.
What the hell is that? What is that?
They've got a Tor address down there. Neat. I do not have a Tor browser set up on this computer, so I can't browse to it right now. But it's nice. I mean, I did see some things in there like FAQ as well that it seems like at least they're trying to take security seriously. Like, how can I register? Email or XMPP? But they mentioned, they use OTR, they support BGP. So those are at least words I like to see. I don't know, it's hard to say, does the implementation follow through? What will their practices be? What will their relationship with their consumers and the community be? We don't know yet.
They also have a link. They also have a link at the bottom of the page with iPredator.
Right, like it sounds like so in there, who's behind this? That we're a team of committed internet activists who are also involved in other privacy projects such as the iPredator VPN service. Some of us have also been involved in projects like the Pirate Bay, Pirate Biren, and Flatter. So it seems like it's some players that we've seen before, people who do take this stuff seriously, which, that makes me feel a little bit better. But we have to wait and see. It is still kind of a tenuous idea.
How do we know?
Yeah, how do we know? Also, yes, right? Like anyone can write that. Where's their identity token? Come on, guys.
It could I think this looks too smooth to be a scam. I looked, the domain was registered late 2016.
Okay. So it wasn't like just overnight.
No. I wonder who they registered with.
I wonder that as well. We'll have to look that up. That'll be in the post show, perhaps. All right. Well, then, unless you have anything else, we can move on to our next sponsor. So if you do get yourself a really fancy new private domain, I've got the place you should host it. That's our friends over at DigitalOcean. Head on over to DigitalOcean.com. There you'll find the easiest way to spin up a brand spanking new even, VPS of your dreams. Whatever distribution you want. Maybe you want FreeBSD, Debian, Ubuntu, Red Hat, whatever your fancy. In under 55 seconds, you will have, for only $5 a month, a brand new 512 MB of RAM, 20 gigs of SSD, 1 CPU, and a whole terabyte of transfer. Just look at how easy it is, right? That's one of DigitalOcean's best things. You go there, you use our promo code, which is SNAPOcean, just one word, under lowercase, SNAPOcean. That gets you a $10 credit. And like I said, prices start at only $5 a month. So that's like 2 months. You can experiment. Hey, maybe you want to play with Squirrelmail or Roundcube or other projects. DigitalOcean is a perfect place to try that. One of the best things about them is probably you'll find in their community section, in their awesome documentation, you'll probably find tutorials to set up pretty much all the software that you want to play with. So it makes it, not only is it easy to get going, it's easy to keep going because they have enterprise level features. Things like monitoring, load balancing, private networking, so you can have, unmetered connections between droplets in the same data center. Plus they have backup, snapshots, pretty much all the features you've come to expect from a serious cloud provider, but it comes in a super simple, intuitive interface. They've got a great API, great apps, a ton of community apps, scripts. We use it here at the network to control our integrations with YouTube and other things, so it's super handy. It has a ton of uses. And they have data center locations all over the world. New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, London, Toronto, Frankfurt. It grows all the time. I swear every time I check, they have a new data center. And go follow them on some of their social media accounts because they have awesome, if you enjoy the pictures of Dan's rack, the other hardware we show on this show, you will love the pictures DigitalOcean have. They have some beautiful data centers, immaculately cared for. And you can tell, right? They do this seriously. It's real virtualization, KVM hypervisor. They got 40 gigabit E right to those hypervisors. So they know what they're doing. They're in it to win it. And they want to make the whole thing super easy, simple, and fast for you. So DigitalOcean.com, use our promo code SNAPOcean. That lets them know that you appreciate them sponsoring this here program and gets you started in under 55 seconds with a brand new VPS of your very own. So thank you, DigitalOcean. Alrighty then. I almost got so distracted. I was just going to go spin up a droplet, start playing, maybe install Roundcube, but no, we're in the middle of a show, so we have to keep going.
No Roundcube yet.
No.
You have to wait.
Maybe
you have
tonight.
to wait.
Although I got to set up my phone still. So many things to do.
Roundcube phone. Yeah. Roundcube phone. Which one are you going to do?
I don't know.
You need Roundcube before you can use your phone.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Got to get the email thing working. All right. Well, so the last two stories felt kind of related. This next one takes a little bit of a different track. And I feel like maybe you're just going to rub it in my face here. But
Sort of.
I think it's good news.
Well, if they can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah. So what's going on?
Basically, Canada's gone full net neutral, or is going to.
Wow.
So the photograph at the top is the tower. That's Parliament Hill. The tower in the middle of it is the Peace Tower. And this is known as Parliament Hill. And so everyone's up there saying, yay, yay, yay. Any Canadian should recognize that photo. So, to the point. CRTC, Canadian Radio and TV, I can't remember what CRTC is. The equivalent, but better, of FTC or FCC. It's sort of combined. No, FTC is Federal Trade, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission.
So they're the ones that regulate internet providers, cell phone providers, stuff like that. So these are the people you want on your side. And they are cracking the whip much more than FCC or FTC have been cracking the whip down here. So basically, this is the final chapter for now on net neutrality governance framework. So basically, they've set out a policy that establishes strong safeguards against net neutrality violations and severely restricts the abilities for providers to engage in zero rating practices. Now, from what I can tell, these zero rating practices are the one that say, gorge on this thing here as much as you want. It won't cost you anything and it won't be counted against your data. Which, when you hear about it, you say, oh, that's great, that's great. But no, that's not great. It may be good for you because you really like that. But what if I like this thing over there? Why am I being charged data for that when you get that for free?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same kind of content. Why are you differentiating?
I mean, what if people want to watch TechSNAP, but they really don't want to use YouTube? We have other ways of distributing this program, But you'll have to pay for that data on a lot of these plans, or a lot of these, once these things are set up that way.
Yep. And it's all about choices. If you don't want to use YouTube, you shouldn't be forced to if it's available another way. But if you're going to be penalized for using the same data but from another location, why? It's silly. I go back to what I've always thought of ISPs as providing a pipe.
Right, a dumb pipe.
My data here, a dumb pipe. Don't be doing stuff you shouldn't be doing. Just supply me my 300 megabits a second and don't do anything else. Don't be restricting my YouTube because I'm pulling down YouTube. Don't be restricting something else because you, as a content provider and an ISP, have it over here. Like, don't be doing silly buggers with Netflix. I'm looking at you, Comcast, just because you also provide movies. Don't be mucking about with Netflix. Thank you very much. Anyway.
You're just protecting them because they use FreeBSD. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, they do. They do. And AWS.
Yeah. Let's talk more about them later. Yeah. Back to the story at hand.
Back to the story. So back in 2009, the Commission established its first net neutrality policy, which actually had a good test in 2013 when a graduate student in telecommunications filed a complaint with the CRTC over how Bell, like Bell Canada, but it actually does a lot of ISP stuff, and its approach to mobile TV, its mobile TV product. And so in 2015, January 2015, the CRT released its decisions siding with class, with a graduate student class. Sorry. At that time, the Commission expressed concern that the service may end up inhibiting the introduction and growth of other mobile TV services accessed over the internet, which reduces innovation and consumer choice. So this was 2 years ago. They were worried about it then. So basically, today's decision completes that process that started in there. Now I say today's, but this is actually April 20th. So the Commission concludes that differential pricing practices, generally speaking, result in A, a preference toward certain subscribers over others, B, a preference towards certain content providers over others, C, a disadvantage to subscribers who are not eligible for or interested in a different pricing package, and D, a disadvantage to content providers that are not eligible for or included in an offering. So basically, they're concluding that differential pricing is anti-competitive, which it is. It's preferring one over another. And people can say, well, that's okay, though. They're allowed to do that. Well, it's going to be bad for you in the long run. And this is why I've always supported, why I support net neutrality. And some ISPs are some content providers or ISPs and content providers mixed in together are saying, oh no, we have to be able to smooth things out and throttle things back and stuff like that. What they're doing is they're confusing the issue by saying that because of threats and overuse and stuff like that, we have to be able to do this. Well, that's a different thing. And you're using that thing to say net neutrality. And this has nothing to do with being able to throttle things back and stuff like that.
You can limit my switch port, no problem. You don't need to care what packets I'm sending through it.
They get to that down here.
Oh, really? Okay, interesting.
They get, not switch in particular, but that particular, what you just said, it will be relevant down here.
Excellent.
So what the CRTC has done is established a framework that bears considerable similarity to what it did in 2009. It will allow for a complaints-based mechanism that can lead to an evaluation of whether the differential pricing is compliant with the law. So basically, someone complains, they investigate. That's pretty good. I like that. So I'm going to go into 4 main criteria that they went over. So basically, when they go to evaluate a complaint, they will look at the agnostic treatment of data. So by zero rating data traffic from certain providers, that's wrong. But you are allowed differential pricing practices that treat data agnostic, so such as a time of day offering. Wouldn't you love cheaper internet, say from midnight to 6? I'd be downloading all my big backups then.
Yeah, that would be nice. I mean, just kind of like we already have with cell phones, right?
If I was being charged for data.
Yes, right.
That's what I would take advantage of that. So this is one thing. Be agnostic in your data. That's exactly what you said. Don't worry. If you want to treat the device separate from the data it's pulling down, fine. But I'm not even sure about that. Why does it matter to you whether I'm looking at something on my cell phone or looking at something on my laptop? I should be able to pull down the same type of stream.
Right. I want to pay you a reasonable amount so that you can make a fair profit, especially, and then to be able to support and provide the pipe so that I can get this information. Yep. But beyond that, that's all I need.
Yep. Stop throttling.
Yeah.
Stop playing silly buggers. So, point B, the exclusiveness of the offering. So basically, they'll look and see whether or not the differential pricing practice is exclusive to a particular class or group of subscribers. So basically, give it to everyone. If you're going to offer something, offer it to everyone. The complaint mechanism will look at the impact, I hate that word, the effect on internet openness and innovation. So basically, they'll look at whether the differential pricing affects the ability of content providers or innovators to enter the market by creating barriers to entry, or whether it affects innovation, or whether different pricing practices favor large, established content providers over smaller and new entrants. That sounds fair. So basically, they're not going to be favoring Netflix over someone smaller who's just starting up with the same thing. You're not going to be able to say, oh yeah, Netflix is data free, but this new startup, no, you gotta pay for that data. So, and this is the next one. This is the last one. Whether there is financial compensation involved. So basically, if an ISP receives payment from a content provider in exchange for zero rating data traffic to and from that provider, that'll raise a concern. So basically, no bribes. That's what I consider that. That's not a payment. That's a bribe. And that's what, wasn't it Comcast?
Right.
It was Comcast that said, Netflix, give me money and we'll stop throttling you.
Right. It felt like they were, they're really trying to get from both ends there, right? Like in theory, like as your Comcast subscriber, I'm already paying you to maintain your infrastructure, to provide the connections, to get peering to the wider internet for me. So why should other people then also pay for their, that doesn't make sense.
What would be an analogy? An analogy would be buying something from Amazon, for example, and paying for shipping. And when UPS turns up, they say, oh, listen, you have to give me an extra $5.
Right. They only paid to get it here. Then there's the delivery fee and the unload charge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's exactly
Would not fly.
No.
Would not fly.
And it doesn't seem like you see like in many areas, it ends up being a very different thing between like business to business or enterprises, or like big backhaul peering companies. And then what you end up seeing on the consumer side and that last mile. Especially since like a lot of these companies are so entrenched and may have the only connections available to a lot of subscribers.
Yep. It just drives me crazy that politicians are not getting behind net neutrality down here. It infuriates me. It's one of the most important things with regards to the internet, and they just seem to be saying, oh no, it's not very important. It's okay. So one thing they did not look at was data caps. They declined to ban the practice, and they're going to monitor it for now. By the way, I want to point out who wrote this article, Michael Geist. Michael Geist has been involved in internet-related and security and things for several years. He's a lecturer, professor at University of Ottawa, and I actually ran into him one day. I was in a hallway while we were serving lunch for BSDCan or PGCon.
Oh, nice.
And Michael Geist walked by, and I said, sir, can I talk? I was all fanboy sort of thing, just so. Anyway.
That's adorable.
It was. I think that's why he doesn't answer my email anymore.
Right. He's like, oh, it's that creepy Dan guy. Ooh,
yeah.
I'll stay away.
In sum, this is a huge win for net neutrality in Canada, as the CRTC was ultimately guiding by its long-standing principle that telecom regulations should restrict the ability of ISPs to determine winners and losers through their power as the internet's gatekeepers. I just love that sentence. And that's exactly right. Stay out of the game.
Especially important, like when the internet is a main way to do business, to get news, to have, even to like conduct a basic political activity. So it's even more important that we have these things protected.
Yep.
It's nice to see that they're, there may be subtle issues here or other things, but it seems like by and large, they understand what's happening. They have the right priorities for how to evaluate this. But not in a way that, it doesn't have to crush innovation. It's not necessarily over-regulated. It's like a reasonable set of clear principles that, businesses can understand what they need to operate by, and consumers can understand the practices that, the businesses they will enter into agreements with will also be run with.
That's the key. A third party is setting the standards that this whole industry has to comply to. And from what I understand, down here, the industry is setting their own policy.
Right.
Sorry. No. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So we're moving to Canada then? TechSNAP Canada edition?
That can be done.
Yeah. Love to consider that. Toronto, I hear, is a lovely place.
Ottawa.
Oh, Ottawa.
Thank
okay.
you.
I mean, Vancouver would be
Ottawa.
Easiest for me. It's just like a hop, skip, and a jump across the border.
You might like Victoria better than Vancouver.
Oh, I do love Victoria. Yes. That's a good idea. Maybe my next vacation. Anything else you'd like to add about this depressing or uplifting story, depending on which side of the line you're on?
No, nothing.
Awesome. Well, if you're fed up with service providers, companies, super vertical integrations that you don't feel really are providing you the service that you expect, my friends, head on over to techsnap.ting.com. There you will find a mobile provider that does things differently. In fact, it's mobile. That makes sense. That's what Ting is. They're an MVNO, so they use two different networks. They've got GSM, they've got CDMA, and they resell those to you, and they provide the value add of service. They're not trying to sell you a new store for your apps or a new store for your videos. They want to give you connectivity. So whether it's minutes, messages, megabytes, they just charge you for what you use. It starts at $6 a month. Then you just head on over to the rates page. Really, that's the best thing to do. techsnap.ting.com/rates. And there you'll find this awesome interactive website that'll show you exactly what you could expect to pay. Go check out what you use now. They even have, if you're with one of the big name subscribers, they even have a handy form. It'll log into your account for you. It'll calculate what your expected savings will be. They make it really easy. There's a ton of other great benefits too. Like there's no contracts or early termination fees. You don't get stuck in one of these contracts where you're like, well, you get this many minutes per month, this many messages. If you go over, there's overage charges. Now, with Ting, you pay for what you use, right? So if you have a month where you need to use more, use more. If you're like me, most months you use, a little bit less or a lot less. That's where it comes in. If you go to techsnap.ting.com, that'll get you a $25 service credit. That'll probably pay for your whole month, maybe your first 2 months. It really depends on how much you use. That's the whole point, right? This is cell phone service for adults. Pay for what you use. Upfront costs, you know what you're going to spend. There's no overage charges or penalties. All the stuff that you want included is included, right? Like voicemail, caller ID, tethering, hotspot, three-way calling. The tethering one, that's a big one for me. There's a lot of service plans out there. Tethering's extra, or only this subset of your data you can tether with, or you have to get a separate agreement and make sure it's enabled on your account. No, Ting, they don't care what you want to do with it, right? They're a dumb pipe for your minutes, your messages, and your megabytes. So like, you want to send text, you want to make phone calls, great. If you want to you just want to use data, that's $6 a month, and then however many megabytes you use. It's so easy. It's perfect for a backup phone. It's perfect for like maybe you don't like cell phones, right? You just want to use the data and a SIP connection. Ting's honey badger with that. Just do it. It doesn't matter. That's the thing. Ting wants you to use their service for, whatever you need that falls within their allowed uses, of course. But that's a wide range. And they're on the forefront of technology, right? They're cord cutters. They have a lot of fancy gadgets. I was talking about earlier. I've got my new replacement Pixel phone here in the studio. I'm excited to unbox that, set it all up, get back to having a real phone. And you know what? It's going to be on the Ting network. And it's so simple to set up. You just pop in the SIM card. They have a ton of sales where the SIM cards are only $1, so just stay tuned, watch their blog for that. Otherwise, it's like $9. You can use that service credit for those things, right? So like if you want to go buy a new phone, head on over there, do that. They have a great number of unlocked phones. They work on CDMA, they work on GSM. You can probably bring your own device. That's what makes things different, right? They're not trying to sell you extra services. They're not trying to get in your way. They're just trying to make it work. So head on over to techsnap.ting.com. That lets them know you appreciate them sponsoring our program and you appreciate them not being in that net neutrality game. So thank you, Ting. Dan, you've turned into a clock. What has happened?
When my rack was powered off, I could hear this clock ticking.
Clocks are like that, right? Like you're like...
It's an electric clock.
Oh, that's so funny.
It's an electric clock. And I can hear it ticking now.
Those first 5 minutes of ticking, you're like, okay, it's not so bad. And then like 30 minutes later, you're like, what is that?
No, it didn't bother me.
Okay, nice.
It's something that has to go up on the wall here when I have time. But yeah, when the servers were all powered off, I had the window open. I could hear all the birds. I can hear the birds when that's on, but I cannot hear that clock ticking when the servers are on.
That's why it's important to have a sufficient white noise. Like, hey, you're having trouble sleeping, just pop on over to the server room. Out like a light.
It's very good because I can sometimes not hear people knock on the front door.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
That's only not good if you're expecting a new hardware replacement part and it's the delivery man.
Right. And that's when I usually work from the living room.
You've thought of everything already. And that brings us to the feedback segment. The time in our show where we take a little time, look through our mailbag. Oh, we should really clean that up. Review Twitter. No, we're not getting distracted. And hear from you guys. Our favorites, the audience. So, what do we have today, Dan?
We have Beehive.
Ooh, I like it.
Which I've never used, but
it seems like it's come a long way. I've only played with it like a little bit, but I remember when it was kind of like first announced. And it seems like something they've made a lot of strides. They've added a lot of features. They've come a long way with, early graphical boot and all that stuff, which is
now they're
nice
supporting Windows.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, now you can do Windows without having to do the headless pre-sell. I forget what that's called, but setting it up so it'll just pre-configure everything.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's see what we've got here. Jake writes to us about advice on a virtualization server. Hey guys, thanks for doing the show. Hey, thank you for watching. Also, thanks for mentioning The Cuckoo's Egg last week. It's been a very entertaining read. Oh, that makes me really happy. I enjoy that book a lot. It's great to see other people liking it as well. And I think Cliff Stoll deserves a little bit more notoriety. Okay, on to his actual feedback. I'd like to have a machine that was just a pure virtual machine server. I have a machine that has an AMD FX 8320, which is an 8-core machine, 16 gigs of RAM, and whatever hard drives and video cards I wanted to throw in it. The goal is to banish the machine somewhere where it won't heat the house up when running and run headless. I'm trying to decide whether to keep this machine or sell it and buy something more server-ish and less desktop-ish. I was interested in running Beehive on FreeBSD. Does Beehive support AMD that well? I installed FreeNAS Corral and it indicated only partial VM support. If Beehive isn't a solid option on AMD, everything else is on the table. I'm just curious what each of you would do in my situation. Thanks again, and please do keep the deep dives coming. Don't worry, Jake. You can be sure we will. So what do you think about Jake's question here?
I didn't know. So I went and I asked the experts.
Ooh, nice.
I went and I asked in the IRC channel for Beehive. First I asked on the FreeBSD ports channel, and they sent me over there. For those that don't know, Beehive is like a hypervisor. It's designed for FreeBSD. You can run FreeBSD in it. I believe you can run a lot of Linuxes in it, and you can also run Windows in it. So why would you run FreeBSD in Beehive? Because you're testing kernel code, and you don't want to run it in a jail because that uses your same kernel. So you run it in Beehive, where you can crash it, where you can change it, you can jump into the debugger, stuff like that. So it's great for that. Now, to the question of whether it's AMD or Intel, I had someone say generally it's better on Intel, but I think that's very subjective as to how much better it is or what problems you're going to have. So basically, I was told generally it's good on either, but SVM has had some issues that were recently found but are being fixed. SVM is the equivalent of VMX on AMD. So SVM is the AMD feature. It's called VMX on Intel. So there was an issue. It was found. It's being fixed. Usually it's fine when you run Beehive with the -w flag, which includes unimplemented MSRs. I don't know what that is. But Windows has been freezing on AMD, and that's being debugged now. And they said the bugs have been found on Ryzen, R-Y-Z-E-N. Do you know what that is? I didn't look that up, sorry.
That's their most recent architecture. They just released it like last month or a couple weeks ago.
AMD's?
Yes. Yeah, so it's their brand new architecture.
Yep. So from what Peter was able to find, it seems to be a race condition in the SVM interrupt injection code that happens on faster CPUs. But again, for the most part, I've had no issues on my AMD systems apart from writes to unimplemented MSRs, which are easily fixed by the W flag. So my answer to Jake is don't use FreeNAS Corral. Try Beehive on your AMD because it's there. Try it. See if it works. Because what could go wrong? If you don't like it, get an Intel and do that instead. But use it. It should be fine. You're not going to. It doesn't sound like you need to spend any money. Whatever hard drives and video cards I wanted to throw in it. So you have a working system. Install FreeBSD. Start playing around with Beehive. What's the downside? If you don't like it, you try something else, or you get an Intel card.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Intel's box. But yeah,
I would be curious to know what kind of end game Jake has in mind here. Is it just for personal use? Is the use prioritized, or is the learning what bases it? Because if you're just going to use it kind of as something you don't interact with that much, but mostly to spin up VMs, then there are more options.
He says somewhere where it won't heat up the house. So,
and so if you're less interested in
more,
if you're less concerned with the, it depends. So if you really want to learn, like, I want to get better with FreeBSD, or I want to learn about Beehive, that seems like a great option. And I think it's a great option anyway. If you're less concerned with that and you just want some VMs and you do run into problems with the AMD setup, you can always go look on the Linux side, KVM. There's also higher level abstractions. So like libvirt, it looks like libvirt has a Beehive driver. So you might be able to use that, or layer on some tools that sit at a higher level. Like if you want like a graphical thing, a couple of ones I know of, one is the Kimchi project, which is just like a nice, it's like a nice web. I don't even have a picture there. Anyway, it's like a nice web front end. There's a couple other ones like Archipel and a few other things that can tie in there. So you have more options if you want to do that. If you want to get your hands dirty, you could do KVM and QEMU, but it seems like Beehive would probably be a better answer in that case.
OpenBSD has got their own hypervisor underway. Did you know that?
I remember hearing about that a little bit now on BSD now, but I'm a little bit behind on how that's going. I
don't know either, but that will be so good to have. Yes. It can be ported to other systems too, from what I hear.
Totally. Well, and it'll, if it's in the OpenBSD style, then it'll be minimal and clean and secure by default. So I think that's something that's badly needed. So it'll be nice to have that, even if it's just as a reference.
Yep. It'll be great.
All right. Well, Jake, thank you for writing to us. Let us know how it goes, what you end up deciding, and hey, what cool things you get up to virtualizing. All right, so that ends the email feedback this week. Please do write. Go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact. You can find the email contact form there, or you can find us both on Twitter. Stay tuned for the end of the show. We'll talk about where we live there. Dan, you wanted to talk a little bit about DNS.
I did. Someone said that they wanted a deep dive on DNS, but I'm not going to do that. But what I will do is, for those of you that have never looked at DNS, give you a good analogy of what DNS is. I've always explained it to non-technical people as being a phone book. Imagine everyone's familiar with the phone book for their hometown. Might be that big. Then when you get into a city, it's like that. Now imagine a phone book for the whole state, and then a phone book for the whole country, and then a phone book for the whole continent, and then the world. But that's not something you want to carry around with you. So that's why we have phone books for all these different towns and villages and different places and stuff like that. And why, instead of having a massive book for everything, you have different books all around the country. And that's how DNS is broken up as well, where instead of having one massive server that everyone queries, we have servers all over the world, and all the information for all the different domains is split up amongst all the different servers. To give you an idea, if you want to look up somebody's name and phone number, and you know where they live, you can go to the library and maybe they have access to that. But imagine if you just wanted to look up dan.langell.org, one of my domains. Is one of my blogs. So if you wanted to look that up, well, really, the way domains work is you'd actually go to the dot server, because every domain ends with a hidden dot. It's not always shown, but there is a dot there from a technical point of view. And so what you do is you go to the dot servers and you say, hey, listen, I'm looking for help here. Can you tell me where I look up org? And they say, oh, yes, you look up org over there. And they'll give you some name servers, and you go and look that up there. And they say, oh, well, okay, now I want to know where langell.org is. And they say, oh, yes, the name servers for langell.org are over here. And so you go there and you look in that book. And then in that book, you probably will find the records for dan.langell.org. But conceivably, you could have them say, oh, you want dan.langell.org, not langell.org. Well, for dan.langell.org, you go over here. And that's where it should end. So that's sort of an idea of how it works. But think of it in terms of having a huge book with everything in it, but all the different parts of the book are spread out in different places. And you start at the top and you work your way down like a tree. And that's really what DNS is all about. It's about being distributed, so that if one node goes down, you can still get to the information you need. Most domains have at least 2 name servers. Some may have 3. I think for langell.org right now, I have 6. Speaking of which, I did not start this thinking about this, but I did tell them I was going to mention them. Buddy.ns. buddyns.com or .net. I started playing, buddyns.com. I started playing around with them just last week. And it's the difference between an authoritative DNS provider and a non-authoritative DNS provider. And this came up at work recently when we used that term. Basically, buddyns.com is for domain owners. And what was it? EasyDNS? Someone that Cisco just bought.
Yeah. What is that? Let's see.
Basically, they're who you set your non-technical folks DNS servers to. So there's 2 types of DNS providers. DNS providers for non-domain owners, where you go to look up various DNS queries, and then there are DNS providers for domain owners, such as buddyns.com. Did you look at it?
Yeah.
OpenDNS, that's the one.
Yeah.
Yes, OpenDNS. So you put your grandmother on OpenDNS because it will protect her from a lot of very nasty things, such as phishers and malware and stuff like that. Because OpenDNS has a big cache of known bad IP addresses and stuff like that. So it won't let you go off to these websites that have this phishing content on it. So we've got sidetracked. And full disclosure, OpenDNS was acquired by Cisco and unemployed by Cisco. So DNS is like that. It's just basically a hierarchical distributed network of information. And what you do as a domain owner is you specify your name servers out there and your zone files. That's what it's called, as a zone file. We're not going to get into what that is, but your zone file sits on your name servers. And when those queries come down, somebody's going to start querying your DNS server, and that's how they're going to know where your blog is. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's a good start. Oh, and this came up at work today. If you're sending mail to foo.bar, if you're sending mail to me at foo.bar.com, foo.bar.com does not need an MX record. If you're sending mail to me at bar.com, maybe you need an MX record and maybe you don't. But if you're sending to a host, generally you do not need an MX record, despite what some people think.
Interesting. That's good to know, actually. I don't know if I've gotten into that level of detail for my own mail configurations, but I suppose that makes sense.
Well, by default, your MX is your host.
Right, yeah.
Because that's what mail used to be all the time, was it used to be sent to a host.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like, hey, I want to send this mail to that server over there.
Yep.
Here's where it lives. That you can look up its address. Yeah.
Yep. And then people got domains and email became portable.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Do you have a domain that you own that you receive mail on, or do you use someone else?
Yeah, if people want, they can send email to wes@noblepain.com. I think there's probably a few. I mean, there's all the other standard, email attributes that you should, admin and all those things. But yeah.
I bought a domain. I bought langell.org. Well, that wasn't the first email domain I had, but I got langell.org because I never wanted to change my email address again.
Right. Yes, exactly. It seems so archaic, to have it tied to some like random ISP that you had 10 years ago or something.
Yes.
And that's going to be your interface to the world?
Yes.
No, thank you.
Yes.
But it's not always easy, right? Like you have to pay for a domain name and then understand how to set that up. And like already we're too deep for 95% of people to try to get that set up.
Yes. That's why I know that langell.com feeds out email addresses. So I could have Dan at langell.com if I wanted, I think. Find yourself a more meaningful email address.
Oh, yeah. Look at that. Real names.
$35 a year.
Wow.
That's not bad.
Yeah. Especially if you don't have to do any
nothing. I don't know. Do they provide storage 10 gig? It's webmail. So you can use it mobile too. So they must have IMAP servers. See, iPhone, iPad, Android, Windows Phone.
I'm really hoping
desktop.
This is secretly your business and you're just promoting it right here very underhandedly. Who doesn't want at langell.com? I mean, come on.
Who wants that?
Yeah.
I am the only person at my company with my last name. If you go out to Nova Scotia, you open up the phone book that I told you about, you'll see 2 pages of Langells in some parts of Nova Scotia.
Oh, really? Interesting.
I went to school with two or three other Langells that were not related to me.
That's bizarre. I suppose I see a fair number of Paines out in the world, so that does happen.
It's a French name.
Okay, that makes sense.
From Normandy, and I suspect that the Langells in my family were at one time French before the British took over that part of what was known as Acadia.
Right.
I may have told this story before.
A little bit, I think, but I'm not sure.
There is a U.S. connection. And so when the British took over, they were very distrusting of the Frenchies that were left. So they said, either you swear allegiance to the British Crown or we're going to kick you out. Time came. Some didn't swear, so they were kicked out. And they were forcibly removed from the land. And this in history is known as the expulsion of the Acadians. So at that time, many of them went to the nearest French colony, which happened to be Louisiana. And these people are now known as Cajuns.
Oh, yeah.
Because Cajun is a mispronunciation of the word Acadian.
Isn't it funny how things like that develop and then just become entrenched in culture and language and they just stay there?
And every time I tell that story, it sends a shiver down my spine when I get to that. And it really does. It's just such a cool story.
That is a cool story. And it speaks a lot to human nature, I think.
Yep. Okay. That's enough about DNS.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, that wraps up our feedback. If you love DNS, you want to hear more about it, or you hate DNS and wish we would never talk about it again, jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact. That's how you send us email. We'll read it right here on the air if you're lucky. Please do give us feedback. We love it. It's a lot of fun. It helps drive the show, helps us build our connection with you guys, our audience. And hey, that's what we're here for. So write to us and we'll see you next week right back here for the feedback segment. And that brings us to the final segment of today's show. That's the Roundup, the time of the show where we want to share some stories we didn't have enough time to do a deep dive, cover them in the main segment, but we think you'll find them interesting. Go check them out. You can think of it as homework for the TechSNAP program. So what do you have today, Mr. Dan? I'm always excited for the Roundup. There's always, it's one of the most diverse sections of the show. There's like strange stuff in there and stuff that might not be appropriate for other things or things we don't want to, it's not necessarily something that we want to deep dive in, but it's always fascinating.
Well, we only have 3 things tonight. 1, 2, 3. Yes.
So it's a light roundup.
It's a light roundup. Last week, I think we talked about the APFS. If not, yes. It was the week before. So this chap has started to reverse engineer APFS. And it's interesting to see what he's come up with. And I wonder how much people have gone through this and started comparing it to ZFS, because I don't see the words ZFS mentioned here anywhere. But they're talking about timestamps being 64-bit nanoseconds. So 1,000 millionth or 1/1 billionth? 1/1 billionth seconds
of a second, yeah.
From UTC 1970, so the Unix epoch. So the current timestamp is around whatever. Standard block sizes are 4K per block, and it is a copy on write file system.
Woo!
No surprises there. Do you have one of those on your desk?
Yes, I do. Well, it's Chris's. I've just co-opted it for this here show.
I think you should use that much more often.
Excellent, I will.
So yes, it's copy on write, and copy on write is very useful because it is very good for maintaining integrity. They have checkpoints. Now, from what I remember that they have checkpoints, but not checksums. Oh, the header starts with a checksum for the whole block. So they use Fletcher's checksum algorithm. They do not, if I recall, they do not checksum the data.
Only the metadata, yeah.
Only the metadata. So I guess that's good enough. I would have liked to have had a checksum. I think
that's the most contentious part of this whole, everything else I've seen with the APFS discussion. I think that was that's what people are talking about the most.
Yeah. Well, I wonder how you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing this. If they're not doing a checksum for iOS, but when OS X comes out, it has a checksum.
That's an interesting question. And it makes you wonder too, what they're targeted is I think for me, one of the things about ButterFS on the Linux side, it hasn't, it did not develop into the ZFS replacement that some Linux users hoped that it would, especially not for I'm going to go build a terabyte or a petabyte array and it's going to be my storage for the next 10 years, right? That's not how it's used. But it did, I think, show a lot of people that there are benefits to just having copy on write, being able to do snapshots, all of those things, even just for your root file system. So it makes me wonder about what what is the design goals of APFS? You know, it seems like they can get a lot of, you know, something like boot environments or other ways to make sure their devices are more stable, even if they never intend for desktop users to have a big, you know, external RAID array.
Well, to be honest, the people that are using OS X are very different from the people using, not the people, but the use case for OS X is very different from the use case for Linux or FreeBSD. Totally different.
Yes. I just wonder, will people start using it? Let's say you're like an audio video professional and you want to have like a big APFS array over Thunderbolt for your clips. Will that be better, or will you miss the checksums on your data there? And would ZFS still be a better option?
Or I'm gonna install these apps this afternoon. Let me snapshot my file system before I do that.
Yeah. See, that seems great. Or like, hey, I'm going to upgrade to the new OS X point release or whatever. Like, boom, snapshot, done.
I'm going to delete all these photos. Let me snapshot before I do that.
Or what was the contentious issue where like now Apple uploads your songs to the cloud or something? I don't know. But yeah, there's like a lot of use cases for this. So even without that, it looks very promising. And this is a great blog post. They have a lot of detail here. If you're a file system nerd or you want to get down to the nitty gritty of what's going on here, I definitely recommend it. Anything else you want to add about the APFS stuff?
I kept thinking of how people have implemented CIFS and Samba and stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they start doing this with a remote, like an open source version of APFS.
Oh yeah, that's a good that could be interesting. That could be the start of a new next generation file system. Kind of take what Apple has started and use that design engineering and start something new. Huh. I had not thought of that, but you're right. That would be very consistent with kind of what we've seen happen, especially in the file system space. Okay, well, we'll have to stay tuned. I'm sure we will talk about more about that file system as it develops and as we start hearing more, more real world use cases, more server use cases, more laptop use cases, all of those things.
Yeah. Let's swap the next two.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Alrighty then. On to our next roundup item. This, my friends, this is why you secure SSH on your web-facing server. So this is a link over to the Linux subreddit, and the user jprice111 has posted something. It looks like it's from his personal logs. There we go.
But the host name is like SCW.
Yeah, so who knows where he got it from?
DC645. So, yeah.
And if you can see that there, you'll see failed password for root, failed password from root, from like different IPs, a lot from one IP address, authentication failures. I think the summary is spot on. This is exactly why.
But look at the timestamp. This covers 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah, right. Yes, exactly. That's a good point. It's amazing. I know, like, I'm sure every junior admin out there has had that moment. Like, you send up your first public server or whatever, and you're used to the internet's so vast, and you're like, well, I don't know, like, how often do you go ping some random IP address? But people do, and you suddenly start realizing, like, oh, wow, yeah, someone in China really wants to knock on my ports. So, I mean, we shouldn't have to say it, but, like, come on, use keys, super easy, failed to ban.
Use keys, not necessarily failed to ban. Like, some places who have to allow SSH in from everywhere, yeah. But my servers, they only allow SSH in from certain known locations.
That's always a great place to start, is like just whitelist the things that you trust.
Yes. And despite what some people say here, I move it to another port. Why do I move it to another port? To avoid this in my logs. That's the only reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that debate gets... yes.
Go ahead.
Though that debate gets sidetracked a lot, right? Like, no one's saying that should be your security precaution or your security model. But I do think it doesn't hurt in that, you will, like, there's a reasonable percentage of script kiddies, automated bots that you'll just miss out on.
I'll miss them in the logs.
Right, yes. Or they'll miss you.
Because my servers allow only key authentication. And I just don't want all this crap in my logs that I have to look through when something has happened.
Yeah.
So that's why I put it on another port.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I think I've seen other things too. Like we were talking about S-pipe D earlier, the Colin Percival little anything. People will put that in front of SSH so that, you know, you can use that, you connect, and then you have an SSH connection over your secure socket connection. So there's a lot of options for that. I've seen some pretty sophisticated like port knocking setups as well. That's probably more than most people do. But like really, if you can get your keys in order, maybe you have like a hardware token device as well or second factor setup, you can eliminate a lot of this problem and the noise in your logs.
Yes.
It is great though. It's nice to have this, you know, it's nice to have people pointing this out because it is a real problem and it's surprisingly easy for people to get into your server.
Are you still using some RSA keys?
Not personally, but I'm sure I have coworkers or friends who do.
I do. I have some RSA keys.
Yeah, I think probably my main work one is indeed an RSA key. But all my personal systems are newer ciphers. But that's a good thing to be aware of, right? Like it's really easy, especially if you touch a lot of legacy systems. There's a ton of people, and I feel like I've seen a lot of like pull requests or other things like adding these old ciphers because we never updated past DSS or whatever. And it's like, are you kidding me?
Or old hardware.
Proprietary like network appliances or other things are a huge source of that.
Which you cannot upgrade. There's no
patch. There's no newer support. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's very unlikely that someone's going to be SSHing into this PDU.
Right. And you can then, you know, use further things to restrict it so that you can only access that from such and such. And
it can only be accessed from inside this.
Do you run into like Java problems? I know I've seen some like network gear that has like a Java interface to manage it, but like it's an ancient version of a Java applet that no modern browser will like allow you to run even.
Yes.
That can be pretty painful.
Some of my servers have that for IPMI.
Yeah. Oh, yes. IPMI is a big one. Totally.
Although some of the servers that we've been setting up at work recently, they have IPMI over SSH.
Oh, tell me more.
So you can SSH in and issue all your commands on the command line.
Oh, that sounds really nice, actually.
It's wonderful.
Civilized.
Yeah, and we just...
Not even tell them.
You could script it. Yeah, no, SSH into the box.
That's great.
And then you can do everything right from there.
Because the IPMI stuff's really handy. It just sucks how often, you know, it's like often super proprietary extensions on top and weird interfaces. And
Yep.
I just want to be able to have like an Ansible playbook that goes and does things for me. Come on, guys. Okay, well, enough with that. Go secure your SSH servers. Make sure that you don't have to share something like that. Although if you do have it, another piece of feedback we love seeing is, you know, security failure, security theater, other things that make you laugh, make you cry, make you a little more scared. Please send them to us. Okay, and then on to our final roundup item. I saw this one and I thought like, hey, this is right up Mr. Postgres Dan's alley. Here is a neat story about how SWAT.io migrated from MySQL to Postgres in 2 years.
And they list the top reasons that they were not satisfied with MySQL 5.6. And this is one thing. Cannot online add a new column. That's interesting because you can do that in a transaction in Postgres. You know, begin, modify, alter table, my accounts, add column, freebie, text, semicolon, close, commit.
Right. I mean, I feel like that's
enter.
been part of my deployments, right? Like I'll go add the new column and then I'll run with it. And then later you'll add in the code that uses that new column. And wow, I didn't realize that.
That's how I've upgraded Freshports for years.
Totally. Huh.
It's never taken it offline.
I did not realize this.
Cannot, in a reliable way, add indexes online.
Okay.
There is no JSON support.
Yeah, that's a bigger and bigger one now that like no schema, no SQL databases are popular.
Had complete lockups where max connections was exceeded. We can never find a source, internal, external to our system. Literally hundreds of connections doing select statements, but nothing else. Eventually manually killing them solved it. So, yeah. Wow.
It's neat to see this. Like it's a very... it's like a real world kind of in the trenches. These are the things. Here's like, we have a real thing that we're trying to run here. We have uptime requirements, that kind of stuff. And here are the like nitty gritty problems that you might have, which, like, maybe MySQL is what makes sense for your workflow, maybe not. But things like this can help you kind of decide like the problems they ran into, the benefits they saw, and maybe it can help give you, a better indication of like what you need to prepare for, what problems might you run into if you're going to try to attempt such a big migration for your own business, right? Like I know some people who work at a company, they've just been trying to get off of Oracle databases and move to Postgres, and that's been a huge refactoring for them. So I realize it can take some effort. If you have nice abstractions, it can be less work, but there are a lot of these little differences where surprising differences, even though like 90% of the stuff's the same.
It's interesting reading this as I go through it. So anyone that's thinking of why would they use MySQL or Postgres, have a look at this and go through it and see how it works. Because it is an interesting read. I haven't read it all yet, but I want to.
Yeah, that's right. It's homework for all of us, not just you guys, audience.
Indeed.
Awesome. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the roundup. Anything else you would like to leave before we leave this program?
Test your switches before you jump into them.
Yes, you don't want to have network downtime like Dan. Although, yes. I mean, it sounds like you had some good backups in place, so also do that.
There were good backups in place, but there was the most annoying thing was not quite understanding how the VLANs worked.
Oh, yeah. I suppose that's a good refresher on how everything sets up, how you need it to work, that kind of stuff. It's always nice when you're, not always nice, but it's good to be forced to revisit sometimes.
Yeah, and once I got everything done, the next thing I did, I redid all the cabling in the rack. Ooh. All the internet cables came out, I redid it.
That must have been satisfying.
It was, but that added another 6 hours.
I was going to say, yeah, at least a couple hours.
Yep.
Yikes. All right, well, I guess that wraps up episode 316 of the TechSNAP program. We were broadcast live on April 25th, 2017. If you'd like to find more of us, you can go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com. We've got the archives there of this show, the last generation of this show, and all the other fine shows on Jupiter Broadcasting. jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. That will tell you when we're here live. You can come be a part of the IRC room. It's a lot of fun. Or if you miss us, go to jupiterbroadcasting.com and /contact. That's the contact page. Send us stuff. If that doesn't work, there's techsnap.reddit.com. And you can find us both on Twitter. I'm at Wes Payne. He is at techsnap_Dan. And that's it for this program. So make sure you come join us next week. Say goodbye, Dan.
Goodbye, Dan.
Goodbye, Dan. And goodbye, audience.